Hey guys, thanks for coming back and joining us here at Salty Ginger Talk. Glad to have you back. In today's episode, we are going to talk about how to avoid majoring in minor things. Very common attribute that I see in a lot of people. I fall victim to it myself sometimes. I'm by no means perfect, but it is something that I try to focus on and really think about what is it that I'm actually accomplishing? What am I working towards? And how are my activities, the way I have my days set up and structured, how are they actually contributing towards my goal? Am I making progress towards or the things that I'm focused on actually moving the needle? Or am I fooling myself by being busy and thinking that being busy is being actually productive and useful? So that's kind of the framework that we're using to measure this. So avoid majoring in minor things. Think about like the hustle culture, right? Everyone's got a side hustle. Everybody's supposed to be doing X, Y, or Z. It makes it feel that culture and that thought process makes it feel like being busy is the end goal. Well, that should not be the end goal at all. The end goal should be something specific, measurable, like a SMART goal, right? The SMART acronym: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. That's a SMART goal. So that doesn't mean that you don't need to undertake certain activities. Like you got to wash the dishes, right? I washed the dishes this morning. And so that needs to be done. Is it actually accomplishing much? No, it's keeping my house clean and sanitary and makes us not live like slobs. But you're not actually accomplishing much when you're washing the dishes. It's a minor thing. It's got to get done. Yeah, I took the garbage out last night. Same type of deal. So those are good things that have to happen, but like they're not actual activities and they're not super important. Those are just kind of the cost of doing business. So hustle culture makes it feel like being busy is the end goal. You see lots of color coded schedules, there's elaborate planning processes, there's apps that'll help you organize things, and those are great. I'm not saying that there's no planning should happen because planning absolutely should happen, but it's very easy to think that because you put together a really good plan and you've got yourself really well organized, that you're making progress towards your goal. You're really not making much progress towards your goal. And we'll cover some things that they're easy to feel like, hey, I did a bunch of stuff today, but that stuff didn't actually move the needle or make me any more capable or get me any closer to my goal than I was when I started the day. So, it's easy to get caught up in the planning process and fall victim to what I call analysis paralysis. And I read that somewhere a long time ago, and it makes sense. It actually stuck with me, absolutely stuck with me. That occurs when you spend so much time thinking about details, variables, and possible roadblocks that you don't take any necessary action to accomplish what it is you set out to accomplish. You get stuck in this planning and thinking and considering loop, and you don't actually do the things or take steps towards the goal that you set out to accomplish. And it's not a good way to approach things. And it's very easy to get caught up in that. I liken it to hockey. I've coached a lot of hockey. I think I've talked about this before, but like if you stop running on a basketball court, you don't go anywhere. If you stop running on a baseball field, you don't go anywhere. On ice, if you're on skates, you can take 3 strides and then coast for quite a ways down the ice. That doesn't mean that you're moving your feet. It doesn't mean that you're working hard, but it feels like you are because you're moving. And it's very similar. This whole majoring and minor things feels very similar because you are constantly doing activities. It's very easy to confuse that with achievement or progress towards your goal. And you've got to avoid that. Things, like showing up for work, putting in long hours. I was at work for 12 hours. Cool story, bro. What did you do for 12 hours? I would argue that for 6 of those 12 hours, you probably didn't do much of anything because it's very difficult to be productive over a sustained period of time. And there's been study after study after study that show all of us have different capabilities in terms of kind of soldiering through stuff. I've always been fortunate that I'm able to maintain my kind of intensity and focus on a thing for longer than most people. But even for me, I get to maybe an hour and a half and it's tough. Like it's better for me to take a break, take a walk, do something to kind of let my mind rest and then come back and refocus on something and put that energy in spurts, in stretches. 12 hours, you're not working hard for 12 hours. It's wild to think that that's going on. It's just not possible. So, jamming up your schedule with trivial but inconsequential tasks, like cool story, but like wildly overrated, not useful, not productive. Um, you're fooling yourself into thinking, hey, because I'm doing a lot of stuff, I'm accomplishing a lot of things. And it's simply not true. It's simply not true. Um, you got to judge yourself based on the quality of things that you're doing. Is it high quality? Is it low quality? Is it value add or is it not value add? And there's nothing wrong with watching TV or watching videos on the internet or doing whatever it is you do to distract yourself a little bit and take a break. But that's not progress. That's not achievement. Those are activities. So you should be judging yourself on the quality, making progress. Are you closer to your goal? Have you made more money? Do you have more customers? Is your project closer to completion? Those are ways that you can judge whether the activities you're undertaking on a regular basis are actually moving you towards an accomplishment or if you're just being busy but not being productive. So let's talk about some of those things that feel like you're accomplishing something when you do them, but you're really not accomplishing much of anything. Showing up for work, like just going there and punching the clock for 8 to 10 hours. If you're there for a paycheck and not a career, you're not really accomplishing much. And it's easy to get stuck in a rut. It's easy to take for granted the things that you do every day. It's easy to not think about how do I push myself to get better? Because you're going to feel better about yourself mentally. You're going to feel better physically. You're going to feel better emotionally when you're challenging yourself to become better at whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. Could be work, could be a personal goal, could be a relationship, it could be lots of things that you focus on. But just showing up for those things, really not accomplishing a whole bunch. Attending meetings, right? Meetings, like most meetings, last way longer than they need to. I'm guilty of that. I've held meetings where I'm like, God, that was really ineffective. It was a real waste of time. I had 10 people and we were there for an hour, and man, that's a lot of labor and a lot of manpower to tie up in a meeting. Are meetings necessary sometimes? Sure, they're absolutely necessary sometimes. Do most of them need to last nearly as long as they do? No, they do not. They absolutely do not. Reading and returning emails. Like, it's necessary. You've got to communicate. It's a good way to exchange information, but that's all it's generally useful for is exchanging information. So simply because you received, read, and or responded to a whole bunch of emails doesn't mean you accomplished anything. It's work and it takes time and it can suck the energy right out of you, but it's not. It's not accomplishment. It is not achieving, helping you achieve your goals. Maybe you need to communicate things to people. Maybe it's a part, maybe it's an activity that needs to happen in order for you to achieve your goals, and that's fine. But you're not achieving anything simply by doing those things. Researching your project or goal, necessary. Planning is very necessary. I'm not saying it's not, but you can get stuck in that loop where you continue to research and continue to look stuff up and continue to consider, well, what if I set up my company this way? What if I did this? I would argue that there comes a point, and you need to figure out when that point is, that you need to make the best decision you can make with the information you have available to you at that point, and then measure the results. That's much more what accomplishment looks like. It is taking actions and measuring the results of those actions and holding yourself accountable to the results against what the targets or goals that you set out. So researching, looking into it, like you hear people say that I'm researching how to do this, I'm researching how to do that. Cool story, bro. What are you actually doing? Researching is not accomplishment. Is it necessary? Sure. Is it accomplishing your goal? No, it's not. So don't fool yourself into thinking that by researching things, you're actually accomplishing much. Because all you're doing is arming yourself with things you need so that when you take action, you've got the information necessary to make good decisions, to solve problems, to move the ball forward. But researching on its own, not accomplishment. Activities with no defined way to measure success. So we're going to take out some ads. Okay, great. You took out some ads. How do you attribute what sales came from those ads? Was it a good spend? What's your ROI on that spend? Like taking the ads out, great. That's an activity, but is it an achievement? No, it's not an achievement unless it delivers some type of result. And as long as you can measure that result, you may take out the ads and it may be gangbusters and say, holy shit, we got 1,000 new customers because of these ads, because we surveyed people and or we have a way to track where those leads came from. And that's great. But the ads themselves, you don't know. If you just take out the ads and say, hey, business could go up or down, not related to that ad in any way, shape, or form. So without some way to measure that success, that's an activity. It's not an achievement. So don't forget that. Micromanagement is a big one. I personally read every memo before it goes out. Cool. Is that necessary? Unless you run a PR firm, I'd argue that it's not. That level of micromanagement. I want to review all the reports before they get submitted to the boss. Is that necessary? How is that helpful? Are you personally going to go back and change those? Did you personally put the reports together? Then why do you need to review every single one of them? Micromanagement is a terrible approach. It's a time sucker. The people being micromanaged hate it. The micromanager is not efficient. They're not moving the ball forward or helping to achieve goals. And I argue that micromanagement means you either don't trust the people that work for you or you're a shitty leader. And if you don't trust the people that work for you, you should make some changes. And if you're a shitty leader, you need to inspect the way you treat your people and give them the skills, the tools that they need to be successful, and then get out of their way to let them accomplish what it is they're supposed to accomplish and hold them accountable if they don't or reward them if they do. Micromanagement is a terribly inefficient use of time. You're not accomplishing anything. You're busy and you're annoying people. So quit doing it. Cleaning and organizing your stuff. Again, I talked about a couple things in this. I took the garbage out last night. Necessary? Is it an accomplishment? No, it's not an accomplishment. It's an activity. I washed the dishes this morning because we had dirty dishes. Is that an activity? Yes. Is it an accomplishment? No, it's not. It's not getting me closer to my goal. Is it creating a better environment? Sure. And the environment in which you work is important. I'm not arguing that for a second, but it's not an accomplishment. So don't confuse small tasks, small activities with accomplishment because they're not. If you lose focus of what it is you're trying to accomplish, you're going to get wound up in all these little activities and not be focused on what are you actually accomplishing. So how do you define actual measurable accomplishments? Like we talked about, SMART is a great acronym. Is it specific? I want to lose weight. That's not a great goal. I want to lose 20 pounds by March. That's a good goal. That's specific, it's measurable, it's achievable, it's realistic, and it's time bound. That's a SMART goal. I want to read 10 books by next July. Again, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. I want to write 2 pages in my journal every night. SMART goal, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. So that's a good way to say, hey, am I accomplishing what I set out to accomplish? Can I measure it in those ways? And even if you don't accomplish everything you wanted to accomplish, did you make progress? Are you closer to cracking the code or getting to where you want to be than you were? Then you can feel good about the activities you're undertaking and keep undertaking them to get to your goal. Stop measuring your day in time increments. It doesn't matter how long you work. Trading time for money is a very inefficient way to measure your success or what it is you've achieved. Most people that make good money, I make good money. I make good money because I'm responsible for a lot of things that have to happen on a regular basis. And it's my job to make sure those things actually happen on a regular basis. I don't get paid a lot of money because I have to work long hours. I do work long hours, but that's not why I get paid the money. I get paid the money because the value that I bring through making sure those things happen is high. And so my compensation is high. It's real straightforward. Don't look at it from, it's not a matter of how much you work. It's what you work on that matters, not how much you work. And don't major in minor things. Don't get so caught up in the minutia. I put together a spreadsheet and all the cells are beautifully formatted. Big deal. Does it matter? Does the information in the spreadsheet change because you formatted it really well? It might be easier to read. You might make it easier to interpret, but that's not what the goal is. The goal is to use the data to take action to change and or move the organization forward. So doing those small things, don't major in those minor things. Focus on results. I can't stress that enough. There was an episode in Friends where Monica dated the real rich guy and he decided he wanted to be a UFC fighter. and he just gets his clock cleaned in the first couple of fights. And she says, "Are you going to quit now?" And he says, "Am I the ultimate fighting champion?" And she's like, "Well, you're crazy." I laughed. My wife laughed at that episode when we first watched it. And she said, "That reminds me so much of you because you just refuse to give up, even when you get your ass kicked, even when you fail miserably, even when things go terribly. You get back up and say, I am going to accomplish what I set out to accomplish." Now, have I accomplished every single thing in the world that I've tried to? Absolutely not. Nowhere near. But quitting is rarely the best approach. Now, you have to inspect what you're working on and say, hey, is this worth it to me? Is the juice worth the squeeze? It's funny because I played college baseball and I was talking to some clubs about a free agent contract after my junior year. And I met my wife and we got married and she got pregnant 3 months after she got married. And it just didn't seem important to me anymore. So I could have continued pursuing a career in baseball and I could have had a chance to play professionally. And that's a long road from the minor leagues to the major leagues. And I was very, very average in really as it relates to a professional baseball player. I was nothing special. I wasn't a phenom. I wasn't a hot prospect. I was a guy like thousands of other guys that was willing to work hard and have a little bit of talent. It just didn't seem important to me. So I focused on my relationship with my wife and my family. And 30 plus years later, I don't regret a single thing about it. But that's the result I was looking for. I wanted a good marriage. I wanted a good relationship. And that lifestyle, if I was single, you would have to kick me out. I would have gone kicking and screaming the whole way. I loved everything about playing baseball, but not as much as I cared about my wife and not as much as I cared about being around my family. And so I don't regret a single thing about the path that I chose. But I was focused on the result that I wanted. And I took the steps and the actions to make myself successful and give myself what I wanted. So, and that boils down to the last thing, which is do what it takes. You got to do what it takes to achieve the goals if you want to achieve them. So many times people encounter roadblocks, they encounter resistance, they encounter problems, and they quit. They give up. They throw their hands up in the air. They get scared and they freeze. They stop taking actions. Don't ever forget that compete is a verb. It's an action word. It means you take action. So if you're going to compete in business, if you're going to compete in sports, if you're going to compete in life, you have to take action. Compete is a verb. You have to take actions in order to compete. Do what it takes. It's one of my favorite little stories. So there's two guys on on a lake, a frozen lake, and they're fishing. They're ice fishing, and they're about 100 feet apart. And one guy keeps pulling fish after fish after fish out, and the other guy hasn't gotten a nibble all day. And finally, the guy that has not caught any fish has to find out what the secret is. So he goes over to the guy and says, "Look, you're pulling them out of here like it's your job, and I haven't caught a thing all day. What's your secret?" And the guy that's catching fish like crazy looks up at him and he mumbles, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa." The guy says, "What?" I couldn't understand that. The guy says, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa." He says, "Sorry, I'm not getting what you're saying." So the guy that's catching all these fish spits the worms out of his mouth and says, "You got to keep the worms warm." Pops them back in his mouth. So that's the question. It's a great example of, are you willing to do what it takes? Are you willing to keep the worms warm to catch the fish? Or is fishing not that important to you? And if you're spending a bunch of time on something that's not that important to you, that you're not willing to keep the worms warm for, you got to make some hard choices and say, hey, it's time for me to give this up. I don't want it as bad as I said I did. I'm going to focus on things that are truly important to me, that truly matter to me. And that's where I'm going to spend my time and my effort. So if you're not willing to do what it takes, ask yourself if you should be doing it at all. Because if you're not going to get after it with everything you've got, I don't know if it's something that you should be doing full time. Because in that case, you are majoring in minor things because the things aren't that important to you. And that's the beautiful thing about time. We all get 24 hours a day. You, me, Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, we all get 24 hours a day. It's got nothing to do with money. It's got nothing to do with your standing in life. It's everything to do with the world revolves 24 hours, spins around on its axis once every 24 hours. That same time is available to all of us. What you choose to work on and what you choose to focus on during those 24 hours is entirely up to you. And my argument is focus on the things that are going to move you forward and focus on accomplishments, not on activity. I think you'll find that if you keep that front of mind and find a way to manage that in your own world, you're going to deliver much better results. You're going to wind up in a much better spot. You're going to be much happier with the progress that you're making. So hope you guys found that helpful. It's something I try to ask myself on a regular basis. Sometimes I'm better at it than others, but I know I'm right. You got to focus on the things that are important and don't major in minor things. So thanks for coming back and getting joining us here, guys. Don't forget to go to our website, saltygingertalk.com. All our podcast episodes are on there. All our content is on there. You can subscribe to our newsletter on there. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel on whatever platform you view it on. Thanks again for coming back, guys. Really glad to have you. Have a great week, and I'll see you next time.